The Boston night was a cold drizzle. I was carrying the bourbon for Dad when I heard them, my mother and sister, whispering, "Get it signed Sunday. The Woods' honor will be clean." They had no idea. The failed daughter was the anonymous author preparing to step into the spotlight at the Boston Literary Gala. In front of 500 people, in 14 days, that stage would flip the script. The accusers would become the accused, and the silent one would become the living proof. My name is Jasmine Woods. I am 33 years old, and I have a habit of counting my own heartbeat when the world becomes too loud. 1, 2, 3, a steady internal rhythm to counter the external noise, and the noise of the family weekend was always deafening. I stood in the lobby of the Winslow Back Bay, a place that prided itself on smelling like old money, beeswax, and the ghosts of forgotten debutantes. For 22 consecutive years, this weekend in October was the Woods family's high holy day. It was a tradition forged in my mother's iron will, a command performance for the entire extended clan. 50 relatives, sometimes more, would descend on this hotel, filling its dark wood-paneled halls with the rustle of evening gowns and the sharp, bright sound of conditional praise. The tradition was a showcase, a presentation. We were not here to connect. We were here to be appraised. We were assets to be reviewed, our successes polished and presented, our failures quietly omitted or, in my case, publicly lamented with a sigh of perfectly lipstick disappointment. The air was thick with the scent of hothouse lilies, massive arrangements that were funeral white, standing guard at every doorway. I clutched the gift in my hand. It was a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle, the 23-year-old. It had cost me a fortune, one I had only recently been able to afford without flinching, and it was for my father, Robert Woods. It was the same gesture I made every year, a ritual within the ritual. It was my coded message to him. "I'm still here. I'm still your daughter. Please, see me." He never did, not really, but he always accepted the bourbon with a grateful, haunted look, and we would share one drink in silence before my mother inevitably interrupted, her presence sucking the oxygen from the room. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. 1, 2, 3, I counted. My gaze was calm. It was a mask I had perfected. I was the artistic one, the sensitive one, which in my family's lexicon was a polite word for failure, the one who had gone to Vassar to study literature and had, in their eyes, never returned. I bypassed the main ballroom, where the cocktail reception would be starting. The murmur of voices was already spilling out, a predictable, animal hum. I needed to give the bottle to my father first, to perform my one small ritual before the grand one swallowed me whole. I headed for the elevators, my heels sinking into the carpet. The hallway runner was a deep, dark, crimson red, the color of dried blood, and it seemed to devour all sound. The only noise was the quiet, expensive shush of my own footsteps. The walls were lined with brass sconces, their low-wattage bulbs casting ornate, flickering shadows that climbed the walls. They looked less like lights and more like elegant, stylized nooses, the formal decoration for a ceremonial hanging. The whole place felt like a beautifully appointed tomb. My parents' suite was on the 12th floor, the heritage level. I stepped out of the elevator into a deeper quiet. The air was warmer up here, the carpet thicker. As I approached their door, number 1201, I heard voices. My mother's and my sister's. The door was not closed. It was cracked open, just an inch, probably for a room service attendant who had come and gone. The sound from within was sharp, conspiratorial. I stopped, my hand still on the ribbon of the gift box. I did not mean to eavesdrop, but I was so practiced in the art of being invisible in this family that I simply ceased to exist. "He'll be there. Jonathan K. Bell." My sister, Sloane, was saying. Her voice was just like her, sharp, ambitious, and utterly devoid of warmth. She was the family's success story, the lawyer, the one who had followed the plan. "He drafted the quitclaim deed this morning. It's clean." My heartbeat, the one I was just counting, did a sick, lurching flip. Quitclaim deed. The words were alien, cold, metallic. "It has to be Sunday," my mother, Veronica, replied. Her voice was the one I knew best. Smooth, controlled, the sound of an iron fist in a velvet glove. "At the brunch, after your father's speech." "Why then?" Sloane asked, a note of impatience in her voice. "Why not just get her in the suite tonight? Get it over with?" "Because," my mother said, and the patient, condescending tone made my stomach clench. "Jasmine is emotional. She's unpredictable. If we do it privately, she'll make a scene. She'll cry. She'll run. No. We do it at the brunch, with the entire family watching, with your Aunt Catherine and Uncle David right there. She will not dare to refuse. It's about family obligation. It's about showing a united front. A united front. A family obligation." My blood turned to ice water. This was not a discussion. This was an execution plan. They were talking about me. Then, Sloane laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. "It's for her own good. Really, what is she even doing with grandmother's brownstone? It's just sitting there. It's just in her way. It's just in her way." The brownstone, the house Eleanor Whitfield, my grandmother, had left me, the one place on earth that was mine, my sanctuary, the one asset my mother could not touch, the one place I could write, the one place I could breathe. In her way, my hand, the one holding the bourbon, began to shake. The heavy, expensive bottle, my offering of peace, suddenly felt like a $1,000 brick. I fumbled it, my fingers going numb. The box slipped. I caught it against my chest. A clumsy, desperate movement. The bottle inside made a dull, heavy thud. Inside the room, the voices stopped. My heart stopped. 1, 2, 3, nothing. "What was that?" Sloane's voice, sharp. "Room service. Probably. Go lock the door." I did not breathe. I backed away, my steps silent on the thick carpet, retreating into the noose-like shadows of the hallway sconces. My mother's scent wafted through the open door. Chanel No. 5. It was not a perfume. It was a uniform. The smell of my childhood, of commands to stand up straight, of do not disappoint us, of fix your face, Jasmine, your sadness is so unappealing. It was the scent of old, cold, unbreakable commands. I heard the click of the lock, the heavy thunk of the deadbolt. I was locked out. I stood there for a full minute, the bottle clutched to my chest. They were restructuring assets. They were stabilizing the image. They were going to use 50 relatives as a firing squad to force me to sign away the only home I had ever known. And they were going to do it at brunch, as casually as passing the mimosas. There would be no escape, no way out. I turned. I walked back toward the elevator, my movements stiff, robotic. The bourbon bottle in my arms felt impossibly heavy. My gesture, "I'm still here." I looked at the crimson carpet. I looked at the shadows on the wall. They had made their plan. They had decided my future. I pressed the elevator button. The brass was cold, just like my hands. As the doors slid open, I made a decision. I would still be at that brunch on Sunday. I would still be in that room, with all 50 relatives watching. But I would not be the one signing a single thing. My quiet retreat was over. This was no longer a withdrawal. This was a war, and I was about to turn their polite, civilized, no way out, execution into a stage of my own. I would let them build the entire set. I would let them assemble the audience. And then I would walk out and rewrite the entire damn script, back in my room. The expensive silence of the Winslow felt different. It was no longer a comfort. It was an accomplice. My family operated on narratives, and mine had been written for me years ago. Jasmine Woods, the promising literature student who derailed. That was the official tagline, the one whispered over cocktails and confirmed with sympathetic nods. I was the cautionary tale, the artistic one who flew too close to the sun. Or in my case, too close to a BA in English without pivoting to law or finance. I was the project that never launched, the loose thread in the otherwise perfect Woods family tapestry. I thought of last year's family weekend, right here in this same gilded cage. My mother, Veronica, holding court by the fireplace. Her voice was always perfectly modulated, a tool of social precision. "Sloan is just closing a massive merger," she had announced, her hand on my sister's shoulder. "Our star attorney." The room had applauded. A wave of respectable sound. Then, her eyes found me, standing near the bar. The smile tightened, just a fraction. "And Jasmine," she said, the pause just long enough to draw focus. "Jasmine is still exploring?" The word hung in the air, smelling of failure and stalled potential. Exploring. It made me sound like a gap-year teenager, not a 33-year-old woman. I had simply smiled, the way I always did, and raised my glass. I was exploring. I was exploring the precise architecture of their expectations and finding the load-bearing walls. What I did not say, what I had not told a single soul in this family, was that my exploring had been wildly successful. While they were pitying me, RRK, Wilder was climbing the bestseller lists. RRK, Wilder was me. My derailment had been a silent, focused pivot into a new identity. The contract I signed with North Star Press 6 months ago was sitting in a fireproof safe in my apartment. It was a 7-year deal, $9.2 million, plus a fixed, substantial marketing budget that was entirely under my control. My agent had cried when the offer came in. I had just felt the quiet, satisfying click of a lock snapping into place. The secrecy was non-negotiable. It was the core of the strategy. Gideon Black, the CEO of North Star, did not just publish books, he orchestrated events. "We are not launching a novel. Jasmine," he had told me over coffee at the Newberry, his voice a low thrum of energy. "We are launching you. We are going to treat this like a tech launch. Total mystery. Maximum speculation." The Boston Literary Gala, in 14 days, was the stage. It was the industry moment stipulated in my contract. While my family was planning to ambush me at brunch with legal documents, Gideon was planning a media blitz that would saturate the market. The machine was already moving, silent and massive. Negotiations with Halcyon Pictures for the film rights were near a lock. The final offer was sitting in my lawyer's inbox, waiting for my signal. The anonymous R.K. Wilder X account, the one I managed from a burner phone, had just ticked over 400,000 followers. My family, so obsessed with optics and social media, was completely, spectacularly blind. They followed the Woods development account, Sloan's carefully curated girl boss feed, and the charity boards my mother sat on. They were staring at the wrong screens. And now I knew why the quitclaim document existed. I knew what this weekend was really about. My grandmother, Eleanor Whitfield, the only person who ever asked what I was writing instead of what I was exploring, had left me the brownstone on Beacon Hill. It was the only asset entirely in my name, a piece of old Boston valued at $3.1 million. It was also, apparently, the collateral my mother intended to use to rescue the company, to plug the hole in the Woods development balance sheet. Sloan's sneer echoed in my head. Just getting in your way. They were not just discounting me. They were actively trying to liquidate my last piece of independence. I had kept my success quiet, first as a defense, then as a strategy. Now, it was a weapon. I could have stopped them months ago. I could have flashed the bank statements, the contract, the Hollywood offers, but I did not. I stayed silent because I learned something from their world. The truth, delivered at the wrong time, is just noise. The truth, delivered at the perfect moment, is not just a blow. It is a reorganization of the entire power structure. They wanted me to sign a paper. I was preparing to sign an autograph. My pulse was the only thing I trusted. I counted it. 1, 2, 3, back in my suite. I set the unopened bottle of bourbon on the mahogany desk. It looked like a prop. I looked like one. The failed daughter. The artistic one. I sat in the armchair, the silence of the room a vacuum, and let my heart rate settle. Then I opened my laptop. The feeling from the hallway was gone. The shock. The cold tremor. Now, there was only a clinical quiet, a problem to be solved. My fingers moved with a precision I usually reserved for a difficult chapter edit. First, the family calendar. It was always a monument to my mother's obsession with control. Every hour color-coded, I found it immediately. This Saturday, 10 a.m. Woods Family Financial Consultation. Location, the Winslow. Adams Suite. Required attendees, Robert, Veronica, Sloane, Jasmine. The bait, the stage for the public execution. They would put me in a room, surrounded by 50 relatives expecting me to perform gratitude and slide a quitclaim deed across the table. They would use the collective weight of the Woods name to crush my signature out of me. I screenshotted the invitation, timestamp and all, Exhibit A. Next, my mother's email. I had her password. She gave it to me 5 years ago when she couldn't figure out the new iCloud. And, like a fool, I had become her unpaid tech support. She never changed it. Why would she? I was just Jasmine, the explorer, too busy with poetry to understand the real world. I logged in. Her inbox was a fortress of social engagements and charity board minutes. I searched the name of the law firm Sloane had clerked for, the one she always bragged about. Nothing. They were smarter than that. I tried a different approach. I searched for quit claim. There it was, an email chain not with the firm, but with a Jonathan K. Bell. His signature block identifying him as a private real estate attorney, a hired gun. The chain was from Veronica. Jonathan, per our discussion, attached is the property ID for the Beacon Hill asset. We need the quitclaim documents drafted for signature by this weekend. Please ensure the language is standard, emphasizing the transfer as part of a larger family asset reorganization. His reply, sent only 2 days ago. Veronica, documents attached. As requested. They are straightforward, transfer-on-demand deeds. Clean and simple. My fee is included. I downloaded the PDF. There it was. Jasmine Woods, grantor, does hereby remise, release, and forever quit claim unto the Woods Family Trust. My blood ran cold, but my hand was steady. I saved the entire email chain as a PDF, Exhibit B. Now, my own armor. I opened my personal cloud storage, a drive my family did not know existed. I pulled up the file for the Eleanor Whitfield Trust. My grandmother had not been a sentimental woman, but she had been a very, very smart one. She had seen her daughter. I scrolled past the distribution clauses to the addendums. Section 4. Subsection B. Conditions of asset transfer. It stated clearly that any transfer of primary assets, and the brownstone was listed as the primary, required the unanimous written consent of all 3 granddaughters, me, Sloane, and our younger cousin, who lived in London. Not just me, all 3. They had not just planned to lie to me, they had planned to commit fraud by ignoring the trust's explicit terms. But there was more. Subsection C. The anti-duress clause. My grandmother had been a reader. She loved thrillers. The clause stated that if any beneficiary, me, declared in writing that a signature was being sought under conditions of emotional, financial, or social coercion, all assets would be immediately frozen and placed under the control of the executor, my lawyer, for a period of no less than 5 years, pending a full investigation. My grandmother had left me a tactical nuclear weapon. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the contact, Mara Ellington, my lawyer. She was not a family lawyer. She was a litigator. I had hired her when I signed the North Star deal. She picked up on the second ring. Jasmine, it's late. Mara, it's happening. Code Eleanor. There was a silence on the line, just for a second. Then Mara's voice changed. The friend was gone, replaced by the attorney. Tell me. Winslow, family weekend. My mother and sister are planning to have me sign a quitclaim for the brownstone. They're calling it a financial consultation on Saturday. I have an email from Veronica to an attorney named Jonathan K. Bell with the draft of the deed. Does it cite the trust? Mara asked, her voice sharp. No, it's a simple quitclaim. They're bypassing the trust entirely. Which is fraud, Mara stated. And the anti-duress clause? They don't know it exists, I said. Good. First, send me the email chain. Everything. Second, I'm drafting a cease and desist to be served to Veronica, Sloan, and this Bell character. Citing the trust's terms and the anti-duress clause, we won't send it yet. We wait. We need to know why they're doing this. I know why, I said. Sloan's mired in debt, and the company is failing. This is a bailout. They need my house as collateral. Assumption, Mara said. I need proof. My team can run a check on Wood's development, public records. Same for Sloan. Credit card debt is harder, but if she has liens or judgments, we'll find them. We need to build a complete picture of their desperation. What else? I asked. Evidence. The email is good. It's intent. But we need more. You overheard them. Is there any way to get them to repeat it? I thought, the hotel bar? They would be there, celebrating their cleverness. I think so. They're probably downstairs now. Good. Go there. Your phone. Start a voice memo. Put it on the table or in your pocket. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state, so you cannot record a private conversation, but a hotel lobby, a bar, that is a public space. There is no reasonable expectation of privacy. Just get them talking. Get the timestamp. Send it to me. Do not engage. Do not confront. You are an observer. I hung up. I stood. My legs steady. I was no longer the daughter. I was an operative. I went downstairs. The bar was full of the same families. The same air of privilege. I saw them in a corner booth. Veronica, sipping a white wine. Sloan, scrolling on her phone with a smug look. I sat at a table nearby, in the open, facing away from them. I ordered a club soda. I placed my phone on the table, screen down, and started the voice memo. The ambient noise of the bar, the clinking glass, the murmur of 50 conversations was the perfect cover. I did not have to wait long. Their voices carried. So much cleaner this way, Sloan was saying. Just get her signature before the relatives. She'll be too embarrassed to make a scene. She won't, Veronica said, her voice laced with that familiar disappointment. Jasmine avoids conflict. She'll sign. She just needs to understand it's her duty, that the stability of the family depends on it. It's for her own good. That brownstone is just an anchor on her. An anchor? Sloan laughed. Worth $3.1 million? She'll be fine. She can explore all she wants once the company is liquid again. My thumb pressed stop. I paid for the soda and left. I walked back to the elevator, uploaded the file, and emailed it to Mara with the subject line, Exhibit C. The reply came 10 minutes later. Got it. They're arrogant. And stupid. Good. Now, we move. The next morning, Mara's report was in my inbox. Wood's development was leveraged to the hilt, with a $780,000 balloon payment due on a failed waterfront project. Sloan was not just in debt, she was drowning. $290,000 in credit card and personal loan judgments. They were not just trying to steal my house, they were trying to stay afloat. I started a new document on my laptop, T-minus 14 days. I built the timeline. Day 1. Legal. Mara files a red flag alert with the Suffolk County Registrar's Office. It was a simple, quiet filing. It meant that if any document at all, was filed against the deed for my brownstone, my lawyer would get an immediate, automatic alert. The trap was set. Day 2. Security. I emailed Gideon. Need to update security for the Gala. Private detail. Exit strategy. Will explain. Day 3. PR. I started writing. Not my novel, my speech. I sat at the desk where my family plotted my financial ruin, and I wrote the words that would redefine me. I found the central line. Success doesn't need revenge. It just needs enough light to see by. The work steadied me. This was familiar. Building a structure, planting the reveals. My final moves were logistical. I used my ARC Wilder credit card, the one linked to a corporate account my family had no access to, and booked a suite at the Langdon Boston, 5 blocks from the Gala. I booked it under a different name. Then, the last cleansing act. I picked up my phone. I went into the settings. Find my friends, my mother, Sloan, my father. I tapped Stop Sharing Location. I did the same for the family iCloud account. I logged out. The digital tethers snapped, one by one. I packed my overnight bag. I put the bourbon bottle back in its gift box. I would have a porter deliver it to my father's room in the morning. A ghost. I walked to the door of my suite at the Winslow. The suite my mother had paid for, and I looked back. The room was pristine. It looked as if I had never been there at all. I walked out into the Boston night, into the same city, and vanished. Saturday morning, 10 a.m. I was not in the Adams suite at the Winslow. I was 5 blocks away, in a suite at the Langdon, looking down at the public garden. The air was clean. The room was paid for by our K. Wilder. But I could see the other room perfectly. I had been in it for 22 consecutive family weekends. I could picture the Adams suite, the heavy brocade curtains, the scent of industrial-strength coffee, and my mother's Chanel. I saw the 50 relatives, the cousins and aunts and uncles, all gathered in their Saturday brunch attire, a uniform of cashmere and subdued expectation. They were there for the annual State of the Woods address, which was really just a performance of my father's assets and my mother's social victories. And I saw the chair, the one reserved for me, between my second cousin, who always asked if I was dating, and my uncle, who always explained the stock market to me. Today, it was the only empty seat in the room. An empty space is a vacuum, and gossip, like nature, abhors it. My absence was not a void. It was a statement. It was a spotlight, aimed directly at my mother. I had made my first move before I left the Winslow, a simple, polite instruction to the night concierge, along with a $100 bill. Please have this delivered to the Adams suite at 10:15 a. It's a surprise for my father. Right now, as the murmurs about my absence were reaching a delicate crescendo, a hotel porter would be knocking. He would enter, holding the velvet-lined gift box. He would walk directly to my mother, Veronica, the undisputed center of gravity in any room she occupied. Mrs. Woods? This was arranged for Mr. Woods. She would smile, that tight, public smile, assuming it was a gift from a business associate, another token of their importance. Then she would see the card, the one I had left, a plain, heavy cardstock, my handwriting. For Dad, J. I pictured the moment her blood ran cold. The smile would not falter, but it would freeze, becoming a brittle mask. Her eyes would meet Sloane's across the room. A single gift of rare bourbon had just become a piece of evidence. It was a timestamp. It proved I was in the hotel. It proved I had arrived, and my absence proved, unequivocally, that I had left. The only question echoing in their minds, louder than all the family chatter, would be, what did she hear? Veronica would not be so crude as to check her phone. Not yet. She would deploy Sloane. My sister would have slipped out of the room, her own face pale beneath its expensive makeup, her heels clicking angrily on the marble floor as she headed to the front desk. Then to hotel security. She would demand, as a Woods, to see the security footage. And they would show her. They would rewind to the previous night. They would see me, walking down that crimson-carpeted hallway. They would see me pause by the alcove, just outside their meeting room. They would see me stand there for 2 full minutes, and then they would see me turn, my shoulders set, and walk calmly back to the elevator, the bourbon bottle still in my hand. The footage would be grainy, but the truth would be crystal clear. I had not just forgotten. I had not overslept. I had listened. I had been judged. And in turn, I had become the judge. The real show would begin then. The family group chat, the one I had permanently muted 3 years ago, would detonate. I could write the script for it. Aunt Catherine. Veronica. Darling, is Jasmine all right? We were all so worried. Cousin Mark. Sloane, what's going on? Mom said Jasmine just disappeared? Sloane, the official spokesperson. We're not sure. She seems to be having some sort of episode. She just vanished. Mom is dreadfully upset. Aunt Catherine. Oh, that poor girl. She's always been so sensitive. Uncle David. She's avoiding her responsibilities. Robert needs to get her in line. This is disrespectful. Sloane. We're just trying to help her. We had a family financial consultation, to make sure she was secure, and she just ran. Please, everyone, just pray for her. She's clearly very unstable right now. That was the narrative. Jasmine is unstable. Jasmine is sick. Jasmine needs help. It was the only story that allowed them to remain the victims. They were not predators. They were concerned relatives. I was not a target. I was a tragedy. I took a sip of my coffee. It was rich and hot. Outside my window at the Langdon, the city was moving. Taxis, students walking to class, a man walking his dog. It was an entire world that did not care about the Woods family legacy. I checked my phone, my real phone, the one for R.K. Wilder. The family chat was a black hole of silence on my end, but my inbox was alive. An email from Gideon's assistant. Rehearsal for Boston Literary Gala confirmed. Monday, 4 p.m., Langdon Grand Ballroom. Car service will pick you up at 3:45. Please confirm receipt. I typed. Confirmed. Thank you. Another email. This one from a senior editor at the Boston Sentinel. Ms. Wilder, we are getting strong signals from your publisher that your identity will be revealed at the upcoming gala. This is the literary event of the year. The Sentinel would like to offer you the exclusive front-page profile. We can have a reporter and photographer meet you at a location of your choosing. We are prepared to offer. I smiled. 2 weeks ago, I would have killed for this, an exclusive in the Sentinel. But I did not need it now. The story was no longer about R.K. Wilder, the anonymous author. The story was about Jasmine Woods, the woman who was about to take control of her own narrative, in front of 500 people, on her own terms. A quiet newspaper article was a negotiation. What I was planning was a verdict. I replied, "Thank you for the generous offer. However, I believe the story will be best told on the stage of the gala. I hope to see your reporter there. Best, R. Wilder." I closed the laptop and finished my coffee. Looking out over the harbor, the cold-blooded lesson was simple. I did not have to fight them. I just had to let them be who they were, in a brightly lit room, with the doors locked. They were currently spinning a tale of my instability to 50 relatives. Veronica would be masterful. She would be weeping, dabbing her eyes, a portrait of a mother worried sick about her fragile, ungrateful daughter. "She just doesn't understand the burden," she would whisper, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She doesn't understand what it takes to protect this family." My phone buzzed on the table. A call. Sloane. I let it ring. It stopped. It buzzed again. Sloane. I let it ring. And again. And again. I watched the phone vibrate, the name glowing on the screen. It was a physical manifestation of her panic, her $290,000 panic. The walls were closing in, and I was no longer the escape hatch. The calls came, one after another. Frantic, desperate, 19 of them. After the 19th call, the screen went dark. Silence. Then, a new notification, a text message. Not from Sloane, not from Veronica. From my father. My thumb trembled, just slightly. As I opened it, one sentence. "If you need me on your side, I'm ready." I stared at the words. He was the great, silent collaborator of my family. The man who enabled my mother's tyranny by retreating into his work, his bourbon, his quiet disappointment. He had never, not once, stood up for me. And now, this. Why? Because my absence was a force. My silence was louder than my screams had ever been. My empty chair had finally made him choose. I did not reply, but I held my finger down on the message. A small menu popped up. I pressed pin. His words stayed at the very top of my inbox, a single, warm buoy in the middle of a very cold, very calculated storm. I was alone, but I was no longer undefended. The week was a blur of calibrated silence. While the Woods family group chat was a wildfire of speculation and manufactured concern, I was living in the sterile, quiet efficiency of the Langdon. I was not hiding. I was preparing. The Monday of the Gala. At 4 p.m., I walked into the Langdon Grand Ballroom through a service entrance. It was empty save for a skeleton crew of technicians and Gideon, who stood in the center aisle like a general surveying his field. The room was vast, dark, and smelled of new carpet and ozone. "Jasmine," Gideon said, not turning. His voice was a flat command. "Stage, center, let's check the audio." I walked up the temporary steps and stood at the lectern. It felt foreign. "Testing," I said. My voice, my real voice, boomed artificially, amplified to fill 500 empty chairs. "Good," a technician called from a massive soundboard in the back. "Levels are solid. Ma'am, if you're going to speak softly, do it now. If you're going to project, do that now." "I will be doing both," I said, my voice cutting through the space. "We've got you," the tech replied. "Lights," Gideon ordered. A single, blindingly white follow spot hit me. I did not flinch. I just stood there, letting the heat of it bake my face. "Now, the screen cues," Gideon said. He was on a headset, pacing the front row. "Run the sequence." The massive screen behind me lit up. It was the R.I.K. Wilder story. First, the cover of my first novel, a stark, minimalist design that had been called brave by critics. Then the next, and the next. The screen cycled through them, each one a silent testament. Then, a new slide. A collage of bestseller list rankings, the New York Times, USA Today, the Spiegel list in Germany. Then, slides of critical praise, quotes blown up to an unmissable size. This was Gideon's tech launch in action. He was building a case, presenting indisputable data to a room of influencers. And the reveal. Gideon said. The screens went black. Then, a single photograph, one I had authorized from a private shoot, faded in. It was me, but not the Jasmine Woods they knew. It was me in my element, in my grandmother's library, looking directly into the lens. The photo was timed to appear exactly as the MC announced my name. "That's the one," Gideon said, almost to himself. "That's the moment the stock price triples." He turned to me. "Happy?" "It's effective," I said. He nodded, satisfied. He pulled out his tablet, his mind already on the next logistical hurdle. "VVIPs. Let's review." He started swiping, rattling off names that were the backbone of the entire publishing industry. Editor-in-chief of The Atlantic is at table 1. The head buyer for Barnes & Noble is at table 2. The Sentinel critic who called your second book A Necessary Wound is in the front row. Next to the Halcyon Pictures team, the room is seated. There is not a single person here tonight who cannot move the needle for us. He looked up from the tablet, his focus zeroing in on me. "Which brings us to your entrance. My team has drawn up a protection corridor. You will not be entering through the main lobby. You will not be schmoozing at the cocktail hour. The car drops you at the kitchen entrance at 8:15. My head of security, a man named Michael, will meet you. He will walk you through the service corridors, up the staff elevator, and hold you in the green room, which is actually a converted pantry. Until the MC starts the introduction, you will walk from that pantry, through a curtain, and directly onto that stage. The first time anyone in that room sees you, you will be under the follow spot." It was cold. It was precise. It was perfect. "My guest pass," I said. "Ah," he tapped his tablet again. "You are registered. Your badge is at my hotel suite. You are Evelyn Shore, a junior editor from our new fantasy imprint." He smiled, a rare, thin smile. No one looks at the junior editors. I spent the rest of the afternoon not in the ballroom, but in my suite, rewriting. The speech I had first drafted in the heat of anger at the Winslow felt wrong now. It was too sharp, too personal. It was a reply. This was not about replying. This was about stating, I deleted the document. I started fresh. I would not humiliate them. The world would do that for me. My speech would not be about my family's betrayal. It would be about my journey, about the power of a narrative, about the decision to build a world of my own when the one I was given was too small. I would tell the truth, but I would tell it in my language, the language of theme and character and setting. The room was full of professional readers. I would let them read between the lines. At 7 p.m., the MC, a charming local literary critic, did a final walkthrough with me in the green room. It's a simple cue. Jasmine, he said, his voice kind. When you get to the big line, the one we talked about, the applause is going to come. It's inevitable. We don't want to rush it. So, as you say the line, just touch the microphone. Just a light tap. Like this. He demonstrated, his fingers grazing the foam. My sound guy will see it. I'll see it. And we'll hold the background slide for 5 full seconds. We'll let the room be in the moment with you. Then, we move on. A technical solution for a moment of pure emotion. I loved it. At 7:30, my other partner arrived, Mara Ellington, in a stunning black dress, looking nothing like a litigator and everything like a threat. She was not a VVIP. She was my insurance. I'm seated in row 2, on the aisle, she said, all business. Close enough to see the stage, far enough back to look like a guest. She held up her phone. The cease and desist is drafted. It is addressed to Veronica, Sloan, and Mr. Jonathan K. Bell. It cites the trust, the anti-duress clause, and the evidence of coercive intent. It is attached to an email, ready to send. The moment you say your name, the moment Jasmine Woods is officially and publicly R.K. Wilder, I'm hitting send. By the time you're accepting the award, their inboxes will be detonating. They'll be legally barred from touching your assets before they even have time to be embarrassed. Gideon's team had handled the rest. A media security plan was in place. After the reveal, there would be a Q&A. Gideon's people, planted in the audience, would ask the first 3 questions, all about the work, to set the tone. Any sensitive questions about my family, and they would come, would be routed by the MC to a post-event press conference, which would never actually happen. Instead, for the real press, the ones Gideon wanted to court, there were envelopes, thick, cream-colored envelopes, sealed with the North Star Press logo. They were in a locked briefcase at Gideon's table. They contained the official press release, a fact sheet on the sales numbers, and a summary of the Halcyon Pictures deal. Data, indisputable, hard, cold data. Not a story about a family squabble, but a story about a 9-figure business launch. I was in the green room, the pantry. It smelled of bleach and coffee. I could hear the murmur of the crowd on the other side of the wall, the clinking of glasses, the rising tide of 500 voices. It was 8:55. My phone, the RK, Wilder burner, buzzed in my hand, a final text from Gideon. He was already out there, in the room, at his command post. The message was short. Just walk out. I'll handle the light. I took a breath and waited for my cue. On the other side of the wall, the main event had already begun. The cocktail hour. I did not need to see it. I had lived it. I knew exactly how it would be playing out. The Langdon Grand Ballroom, before the reveal, would be a sea of polite, ambitious noise. 500 people dressed in their literary finest, the clinking of champagne flutes providing the percussion for a symphony of networking, and at the center of it, or at least at the center of their own orbit, would be my family. My mother, Veronica, would be magnificent. She would be wearing the new couture gown she had flown to New York for, a column of shimmering silk that announced her status before she even spoke. She would be holding a glass of Sancerre, her head tilted, accepting compliments as her due. Beside her, her lieutenant, my sister, Sloan, sharp and polished in a severe black suit that was meant to say power. She would be laughing too loudly, recounting a heavily embellished story about a $1 million case she was supposedly handling. She was performing, as she always did, for the audience of assembled power, oblivious that the real power in the room was not with the old money trustees, but with the critics and editors surrounding them. This was the scene Gideon stepped into. I knew my publisher. He would not have been loud. He would have glided through the crowd, a shark in a bespoke suit, until he arrived at their small, self-important circle. "Veronica," he would have said, his voice a quiet interruption. She would turn, recognizing him vaguely as the man running the event. "Gideon Black, North Star Press, a pleasure." He would nod to Sloane. "I was so hoping to see your other daughter tonight. Will Jasmine be coming?" I can see my mother's smile, the one that was all teeth and dismissal. "Jasmine? Oh, heavens no." A light, airy laugh. "She has nothing to do with publishing. She's our creative one. Still finding her way." Gideon would hold the smile. "Is that so? How fascinating." And then, the move. The one we had not rehearsed, but that I knew his instincts would demand. He would reach into his breast pocket and pull out a small, thick card. Not a business card. It was one of the embossed placeholders from the VVIP tables. He would place it gently on the edge of their cocktail table, next to the half-eaten canapes. "Well, if you see her, do give her my best. We're all such admirers of our Wilder's work. We were hoping she'd be here." He would give a small, polite bow and vanish back into the crowd before Veronica could even process the name. The name. Wilder. It was a seed. The editor from the Boston Sentinel, standing just behind them, would have heard it. His eyes would narrow. Gideon Black, the most aggressive CEO in publishing, personally inviting Jasmine and mentioning Wilder in the same breath? He would move closer. A critic from the Atlantic, who had been pretending not to listen, would suddenly find her drink fascinating, allowing her to linger. The circle of attention, the real one, was tightening. Sloane, always the attack dog, would have scoffed first. "R.K. Wilder? Who's that?" "Just some author," Veronica would say, already turning back to her conversation. But Sloane, ever the insecure overachiever, would have her phone out. A quick, dismissive search. Probably some self-published hack. I can see the moment the screen loaded, the blood draining from her face, her thumb freezing on the glass. It would not be a blog. It would be the New York Times bestseller list. Week after week, it would be the Forbes article speculating on the author's identity. It would be the Halcyon Pictures deal announcement. It would be the pre-sales numbers for the next book, numbers that dwarfed her own annual salary by a factor of 10. Her hand would be shaking. "Mom," she would hiss, her voice suddenly stripped of all its performative confidence. "Mom, look at this." She would shove the phone in our mother's face. Veronica would squint, annoyed at the interruption. She would see the lists, the numbers, the name. For a single, glorious second, the mask would slip, the confusion, the dawning, sickening realization, then the wall. "It's a coincidence," she would snap, pushing the phone away. "A ridiculous coincidence. Don't be absurd. Sloane, it's just a common name." But the Sentinel reporter had seen Sloane's face. The critic from the Atlantic had seen Veronica's denial. The whispers had started. The air in the room was changing. And that was my cue. On my side of the wall, in the bleach-scented pantry, a small red light on the technician's headset flashed. He nodded to me. "Showtime, Miss Wilder?" The latch clicked. I heard the MC's voice, amplified, pouring into the ballroom. "Good evening. For 7 years, this author has redefined a genre. They have sold over 20 million copies worldwide. They have done it all in complete anonymity." The heavy service door opened onto blackness, just a sliver of darkness, a void. I stepped into it. Tonight, the mystery ends. Tonight, the most talked-about author in publishing will be revealed. I took 3 steps, and the universe exploded in white light. The follow spot hit me. It was blinding. A physical weight of heat and expectation. I did not stop. I walked calmly, one foot in front of the other, toward the lectern. Behind me, the screens lit up, just as we had rehearsed, the cover of my first book, then the second, the Sentinel quote, "A necessary wound," the sales charts, the data, the sound of the room died, the clinking glasses, the whispers, the shuffling of 500 bodies. It all stopped. It was a vacuum, a collective, stunned inhalation. They were trapped, forced to reconcile the data on the screen with the woman walking toward them. I reached the lectern. I placed my hands on it, the MC, beaming, let the silence hang, stretching it out until it was an unbearable, perfect tension. He paused for 1 second, 2, 3, then, his voice boomed, clear as a bell. "The author of the Wilder series is Jasmine Woods." The sound that followed was not applause. It was a detonation, a physical blast of noise, of 500 people leaping to their feet, the sound of hands striking hands, of shouts, of pure, unadulterated shock. The flashes from the press line were not individual lights. They were a solid, strobing wall, a barrage of white fire. I stood there. I did not smile. I just let them look. I saw Mara, in the second row, her face calm, press the send button on her phone. The cease and desist was gone. And then, I saw what I had come for. The house cameras, the big professional rigs, were sweeping the crowd, and they found her. My mother, Veronica. She was not clapping. She was not standing. She was frozen in her chair. The couture gown, the perfectly managed image. It was all irrelevant. The camera zoomed in, and her face was broadcast on the 2 massive screens flanking the stage. It was a masterpiece of social destruction. The mask was not just cracked, it was shattering. The blood had drained from her face, leaving a pale, sickly foundation. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her mouth was half open, not in a scream, but in a silent, horrified "oh" of disbelief. The woman who lived for the spotlight was now pinned by it, exposed as a fool, a liar, and a failure, all in one terrible, beautiful, high-definition close-up. I waited. The applause that had exploded at my name was a physical thing, a storm of sound that battered the walls. I just stood at the lectern, my hands resting lightly on the wood, and I let it wash over me. I let it die down. I let the silence resettle, heavier this time, thick with questions. I looked at the 500 faces, all turned to me, all waiting. I saw the Sentinel critic in the front row, his pen poised. I saw the halcyon team, their expressions a mixture of shock and delight. Their mystery author was a bankable, promotable story. And I saw them. Table 9, my mother, a rigid statue of couture, my sister, her face ashen, her phone still half raised as if she had forgotten to stop recording. I leaned into the microphone. The small tap I had rehearsed felt unnecessary, but I did it anyway. A signal to the tech booth. "Success," I said, and my voice was perfectly clear, perfectly calm, filling the entire, silent ballroom. Success isn't retaliation, it's the space you build. A space so large and so well lit that you no longer have to. A few people clapped, but most were too stunned, too busy listening. "For 7 years," I continued, "I've lived inside a story I wrote under a different name. It was my choice. It was my protection, but it was also my escape, because the story I was given, the one with my real name, was smaller. It was a story written for me by others." I let my eyes scan the room, not as an author, but as a witness. I want to share 3 moments from that story with you. 3 moments that brought me here, to this stage. The first moment, I'm 22. I've just graduated. I'm at a family dinner, and I've just spent 6 months on the first 50 pages of a novel. I'm terrified of them, but I'm proud of them. A family elder, someone whose approval I craved like oxygen, asked me what my plan was. I said, "I'm going to be a writer," and she smiled. That kind, dismissive, soul-killing smile, and she said, "But darling, What will you do? Writing is a wonderful hobby, but one needs a profession. A hobby, my life's work, my entire identity, reduced to a hobby, a pleasant, harmless distraction. I was minimized. I was made small. I could see the nods, every creative in that room, every editor, every agent. They had heard a version of that line. They were with me. I didn't have an answer for her then, I said. So, for years, I simply disappeared. I learned to be quiet. I learned to explore, as my family so generously put it. I wrote in secret. I built my world in the dark, page by page, because the light in my own home was too glaring. The second moment, it's 3 a.m., 4 years ago, I'm living in a tiny apartment, the one my family calls bohemian, which is their word for unsuccessful. I'm running on coffee and, if I'm honest, a lot of fear. I've just sent a manuscript to a dozen agents, a Hail Mary into the void, and an email comes back. It's not from an agent. It's from a name I recognize from the spine of a book I admire. It's from Gideon Black. The email is one line. We believe this is a generational voice. Do not sign with anyone. Call me in the morning. A generational voice. I looked over at Gideon, standing in the shadows at the side of the stage. He was motionless, but I knew he was listening. That email, I said. It wasn't a contract. It was a key. It was the first time someone from the outside world had confirmed that the world I was building in the dark was real. It wasn't a hobby. It was an industry. Someone didn't just want to read my story. They wanted to invest in it. I was given a border, a place to stand. The room was absolutely still. I could hear the click of a photographer's lens, a single, sharp sound. And now, the third moment. This one is more recent. It was 2 weeks ago. I was in a hotel, a beautiful, expensive place. I was there to do what I have always done, to perform the role of the quiet, unsuccessful, exploring daughter. I was carrying a gift for my father, and I was standing in a hallway, and I overheard a conversation, a plan, not to nurture the hobby, not to invest in the generational voice, but to take it, to take the last piece of my independence, a home left to me by my grandmother, to reorganize it, to stabilize the family image by liquidating my future. I did not raise my voice. I did not have to. The words were blades, wrapped in velvet. I stood there, and I heard my value assessed. I was not a daughter. I was not an artist. I was an anchor. I was a problem. I was a signature, waiting to be coerced. I was being told, once again, in no uncertain terms, that I was small, that my only purpose was to be sacrificed for an image that had nothing to do with me. I looked directly at table 9. The camera found her, Veronica. Her shoulders were rigid, her back ramrod straight. The mask of shock was gone, replaced by a mask of pure, cold, reptilian fury. She was not a victim. She was an empress whose statue had just been toppled in the public square. The camera panned to Sloane. Her phone was in her lap now. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She, the lawyer, was the only one in that family who truly, instantly, understood the legal implications of what I had just said. She knew the words coercion and fraud were now hanging in the air, attached to her name, in front of 500 of the city's most influential people. She was not just embarrassed, she was terrified. She looked down, unable to meet my gaze, or anyone else's. That night, I said, pulling the focus back to me, I learned that there are 2 ways to be strong. You can meet force with force, or you can make yourself so large that the force aimed at you simply misses. I had spent my life trying to prove I was worthy. Now, I just decided to be my work. The work you all know as Rocky, Wilder, became my evidence. My readers, 20 million of them, became my witnesses. The awards, the bestseller lists, they became my alibi. They proved I was not in the small room they had built for me. I was, in fact, somewhere else entirely. I paused. I let the weight of it settle. I am told, often, that I must have a thick skin, but I don't. I have a very thin skin, but I am a very good architect. I learned to build my own house, and the story I am telling tonight is not one of revenge. It is one of real estate. It's about owning your own property. It's about deciding who gets a key and who has to stand on the sidewalk. I took a breath. This was it. That night in the hallway, I realized the truth. I don't need an apology to continue. I just need the right to continue. Silence. A complete, total, profound silence, as 500 people processed the declaration. Then, in the front row, the Sentinel critic, the one who had called my work a necessary wound, slowly, deliberately, began to clap. It was not the explosive applause from before. It was a rhythmic, rolling tide, a standing ovation that grew, person by person, table by table, until the entire room was on its feet, the sound a deafening roar of validation. In the second row, I saw Mara, my lawyer, my shield. She was standing, clapping with the rest of them, and as she clapped, she looked down at her phone. Her thumb moved, and she pressed send. The email, the cease and desist, the legal armor, was deployed, launched on a wave of public adoration. The MC stepped forward, his eyes shining. He was holding the Crystal Award. Gideon, who had been standing in the wings, did not step forward to join me. He took one step back, further into the shadows, leaving me alone in the white-hot circle of light. The MC handed me the award. It was heavy, solid. Jasmine Woods, he said, his voice thick. Boston thanks you. Arak, Wilder, we honor you. The cameras flashed, capturing the moment, and on the Boston Sentinel website, the live blog was flashing, the reporter's fingers flying. 9:30 p.m. Standing ovation. The room is electrified. Woods's speech is a masterclass in quiet power. 9:31 p.m. Headline updated. The reveal that took Boston's breath away. R.K. Wilder is Jasmine Woods. The applause was still ringing in my ears when a hand, cold and strong, clamped around my upper arm. I did not have to look. I knew that grip. I smelled the Chanel and the sharp, metallic scent of her rage. A word, Veronica hissed, her voice a low vibration that no one else could hear. She did not wait for an answer. She pulled me, cutting a path through the well-wishers and the flashing cameras, her public smile a terrifying rictus. Gideon saw us. He started to move, but I gave him a subtle shake of the head. Not yet. This part is mine. She did not pull me toward the main exit. She pulled me toward a side door, a heavy oak panel I had not noticed. She shoved it open, and we were outside. The night air hit me like a slap. We were on a small, private stone balcony, high above the city. The noise of the Gala instantly muffled to a dull roar behind the thick glass. The wind was sharp, carrying the scent of the harbor and cold pavement. She released my arm, shoving me slightly. "How dare you?" she whispered. It was not a question. It was an indictment. You stood on that stage, in front of everyone, and you humiliated this family. You humiliated me. I rubbed my arm, my skin already cooling. Humiliation, I said, my voice steady, is a matter of perspective. I thought it was just a matter of fact. You aired our private discussions. You slandered your sister. You painted us as villains for a room full of strangers. Her voice was shaking, not with tears, but with a fury so profound it was seismic. That story you told, about the hotel, a lie, a performance. Was it? I asked. I reached into the small clutch I was carrying. My phone. I thought you might say that. I opened my voice memos. The file was labeled Winslow Bar, time-stamped. I did not turn up the volume. I just held it between us. My mother's voice, captured perfectly in the public ambiance of the hotel bar, filled the small, cold space. Jasmine avoids conflict. She'll sign. She just needs to understand it's her duty. That brownstone is just an anchor on her. Then, Sloane's. So much cleaner this way. Just get her signature before the relatives. She'll be too embarrassed to make a scene. Veronica's face, already pale, turned a sickly, waxy gray. She lunged for the phone, her nails bared. You recorded us? You vile, treacherous. I stepped back, pulling the phone out of her reach. I documented a conspiracy to commit fraud, I said, my voice as cold as the wind. I was in a public space. There was no expectation of privacy. Mara, my lawyer, the one sitting in the second row tonight, assured me it was perfectly legal. It was not for blackmail. Mother, it was to prevent a crime. The one you were both planning. The balcony door opened again, and Sloane stumbled out, her face a mask of panic. Mom, Gideon Black is asking for you. The Sentinel reporter is... What's going on? She saw my mother's face, the phone in my hand. Her eyes narrowed. Jasmine, what did you do? She recorded us. Sloane, Veronica spat. At the Winslow. She recorded everything. The blood drained from Sloane's face. As the lawyer, she understood, faster than our mother, exactly what this meant. You can't. That's illegal. Is it, Sloane? I asked, turning my full attention to my sister. Is it more illegal than conspiracy to commit wire fraud? Is it more illegal than attempting to bypass a family trust? You, of all people, should know about that. You clerked at the firm that drafted it. You know exactly what's in Grandmother Eleanor's trust. Sloane was silent. Her breathing was shallow. You know about Section 4, Subsection B, I continued, my voice a quiet lecture. The unanimity clause, that states that no primary asset, and the brownstone is listed as the primary, can be sold, transferred, or leveraged without the unanimous notarized signature of all three granddaughters, me, you, and Caroline in London. Your little quitclaim deed was worthless. But, I said, it gets better. You see, I don't think you ever actually read subsection C. The anti-duress clause. Grandmother was a smart woman. She knew her daughter. The clause states that if I, the primary beneficiary, declare in writing that I am being subjected to emotional, financial, or social coercion, say, for example, a public ambush at a family brunch, the entire trust and all its assets are frozen, immediately, for a minimum of 5 years, pending a full investigation by the executor. Sloane leaned back against the cold stone railing, her hand over her mouth. She was not just embarrassed, she was ruined. Oh my God, if you release that recording, if you trigger that clause, we're done. The company, my career, Jasmine, we are done. She was hyperventilating. The star attorney completely gone, replaced by a terrified woman drowning in $290,000 of debt. I know, I said quietly. I looked at both of them. 2 women I had spent my life trying to please, now looking at me like I was their executioner. And I don't want anyone ruined. I just want you to understand that the locks have been changed. I'm not blowing up the house. I'm just locking my own door. What do you want? Veronica snapped, her voice regaining a sliver of its command. Money? You clearly have your book money. I want what is mine, I said. And I want this over. So here is the offer. It is the only offer. The trust is dissolved. I will buy you and Caroline out of your minority stake in the brownstone. We will have it appraised by a neutral party, and I will pay you both fair market value in a structured payout over the next 5 years. The house becomes mine, free and clear. As Grandmother intended, we all sign a comprehensive mutual non-disclosure agreement. We sever this, and we walk away. And if we refuse? Sloane whispered. I looked at her, and for the first time, I think she saw the woman I had become. If you refuse, Mara triggers the anti-duress clause tomorrow morning. The trust is frozen. The investigation begins. And Sloane, I have to imagine the Massachusetts Bar Ethics Committee would be fascinated to learn about a member who conspires with her mother to defraud her sister. Using a private attorney to bypass a trust you have a fiduciary duty to. That's not just a conflict of interest, is it? It's grounds for disbarment. Sloane made a small, choked sound. Veronica, however, had one card left to play. Her face hardened into the familiar mask of iron-willed matriarchy. "You think you've won," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You think those people in there, that public opinion, will protect you? They're vultures. By tomorrow, this will be a scandal, and you, my dear, will be at the center of it. You are still a Woods. Your disgrace is our disgrace. You have only succeeded in hurting yourself." It was the old threat, the one that had worked my entire life. Family honor, the united front, we all fall together. I did not even argue. I just smiled, and I pointed, not at her, but through the glass door, back into the warmth and light of the ballroom. "Look," I said. She turned. Sloane turned. Inside, the party was in full swing, but it was not a room recoiling from a scandal. It was a room celebrating a launch. Gideon was holding court by the bar, laughing, holding one of the sealed North Star press envelopes. The Halcyon Pictures team was in a huddle, toasting each other with champagne. The Sentinel critic was in a deep, animated conversation with the editor from The Atlantic. They were not whispering about a family spat. They were calculating figures. They were planning rollouts. They were talking about the $9.2 million contract, the $3 million film deal, and the anointing of a new, major literary brand. "You're wrong, Mother," I said, my voice calm. "They didn't see a disgrace. They saw a product launch. They didn't see a victim. They saw a CEO. I'm not the one they're worried about tonight. You are." A sharp cold gust of November wind swept across the balcony, whipping my hair across my face and making the silk of Veronica's gown flap uselessly against her legs. At that exact moment, as if choreographed, the sound inside the ballroom swelled. The MC must have returned to the microphone, because a fresh, loud wave of applause and laughter erupted, so bright and so clear that it punched right through the thick glass. The sound of my new world, clear and strong, cheering for me. It was the sound of a key turning, the sound of a heavy iron bolt sliding, finally, into place. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating, but I ignored it. It had not stopped vibrating for 12 hours. I walked down to the lobby of the Langdon, my new, quiet home, and bought a physical copy of the Boston Sentinel. I had to ask the concierge to find one. They were almost sold out. There it was, above the fold, my face, the one from the Gala, looking calm and direct, next to the stark, minimalist cover of my first novel. The headline was simple, declarative, and beautiful. K. Wilder. Mystery solved. I bought every copy they had left, went back to my suite, ordered coffee, and spread them across the floor. It was not a story. It was a new reality, printed in ink. I turned on the television, my face. I was on every local morning show. A panel of critics, authors, and pop culture experts were dissecting the speech, the reveal, the family drama I had only hinted at. It was a masterclass in narrative control, one of them said, leaning into the camera. She didn't just reveal her identity, she revealed her entire family's motive. And that look on Veronica Woods's face, another added. That's going to be a meme by noon. I changed the channel. A business reporter was talking. What we saw last night wasn't just a book event. It was the launch of a major new media brand. North Star Press just played its hand, and it's a royal flush. I opened my laptop. The hashtag, #1. Trending nationally, Jasmine is Wilder. My phone rang. This time, I answered. It was Gideon. He was not shouting. He was calm, which was always more terrifying. He sounded like a man who had just won a war. "Good morning, Jasmine," he said, his voice a low purr. "Just thought you'd like the morning numbers. Online and physical sales, as of an hour ago, are up 380%. That is not a typo. 380% in less than 48 hours. Barnes & Noble is sold out. Amazon is sold out. I've just authorized an emergency reprint of 500,000 units. We are in a new stratosphere. My friend, we are breathing different air. The aftershocks were not all positive. They were just precise. The Sentinel article had been thorough, just as I'd hoped. The reporter, energized by the drama, had done their homework. They had dug, not just into me, but into the name I shared. A small but lethal sidebar on page A4 was headlined, "Woods Development Faces Financial Headwinds." It mentioned, with damning specificity, stalled waterfront projects and significant private debt. Mara forwarded me an internal bank email before lunch. The bank holding the $780,000 note on that exact waterfront project had seen the article. They had seen the public implosion. The collateral my mother had been counting on, my house, was now the very reason her loans were being called in. The bank had formally requested a meeting and a concrete, immediate repayment plan. The leverage was gone. Sloane's reckoning was faster and sharper. It came in the form of a certified letter, a copy of which was sent, anonymously, of course, to Mara's office. "Dear Ms. Woods, the Board of Bar Overseers Ethics Committee invites you to attend a meeting on December 3rd to discuss a potential conflict of interest regarding your firm's resources and a private family trust matter." An invitation, not an accusation, but in her world. An invitation from the board was a death sentence. Her attempt to use a back-channel lawyer to commit fraud was no longer a secret family matter. It was a professional ethics violation, and I was the star witness. And then, Veronica. Her fall was quieter, more polite, and, in its way, more brutal. The world she lived in did not use legal committees. It used social exclusion. By 5 p.m., she had been asked to temporarily step back from the board of the Children's Literacy Fund. The email, which Mara also somehow obtained, was a masterpiece of passive aggression. Given the current, intense media focus, we feel it is in the fund's best interest to avoid any public complications. We are sure you understand. 2 more followed: the Art Museum Guild, the Symphony Board, her entire social identity, the one she had built like a fortress for 30 years, the one she had tried to sacrifice me to protect, was being dismantled. One polite, bloodless email at a time. The noise of their collapse was deafening, but it was all distant. Then, my phone rang with a number that was not a lawyer or a publisher. My father, Robert. I let it ring 3 times, my heart a hammer. I answered. "Jasmine?" His voice was thick, hesitant. "Hi, Dad." A long silence. I could hear him breathing. I saw it. The speech. A friend sent me the video." He cleared his throat. "It was, well..." He stopped. When he spoke again, his voice was cracked. I wanted to say, I am so proud of you. I am so unbelievably proud." I closed my eyes. "And I am so sorry," he whispered, the words heavy, barbed, and, after a lifetime, finally real. "I am so sorry that I was silent. It was the first apology. It was the only one that mattered." The next day, the final piece of the professional puzzle clicked into place. A call from the coast. Mara patched in the Halcyon Pictures executive, the one who had been negotiating the film deal. His voice was booming. "Jasmine, we loved it. The reveal, the speech, the story. The buzz is astronomical. We're greenlighting. This is not a development deal anymore. This is a go picture. The contract is on your lawyer's desk." Mara called me back an hour later, her voice all business. "The advance is locked. $3.2 million. The check will clear in 10 business days. Full stop." I did not sit on the money. I did not buy a car. I did not even look at a new apartment. I called Mara and Gideon back with a new plan. 2 days later, North Star Press, on my behalf, issued a new, formal press release. It was picked up by every wire service. Best-selling author Jasmine Woods announces the Eleanor Whitfield Foundation. It would be a grant program, run out of the brownstone on Beacon Hill, my grandmother's house. It was dedicated to supporting young authors, specifically those facing familial or financial barriers to their work. I was not just locking my door, I was opening it to others who were still trapped on the outside. There was one last call to make. I dialed my father. He answered on the first ring. "Dad," I said, my voice clearer than it had been in my entire life. "I have a proposition for you." "Anything, Jasmine." "The brownstone. It's going to be the foundation's headquarters. It needs a touch. It needs someone to manage the art, to curate the library, someone to make it a home for writers, not just an office." He was silent. I could hear the hope, sharp and fragile, in his silence. "I need an artistic coordinator," I said. "Someone with taste, someone who understands the value of a story. The job is yours, if you want it." I heard him take a sharp, sudden breath. It was not forgiveness. It was not a fix for the decades of silence, but it was a beginning. It was a plank, extended from my new, solid shore back to him, and for the first time, he had a chance to walk across. The end did not come with a gavel or a shout. It came at a small table in the back of a quiet, neutral restaurant in Beacon Hill, a place with no social significance to either of us. Mara had arranged it, just the three of us, me, Veronica, and Sloane. Veronica looked smaller. The couture was gone, replaced by a simple, expensive beige sweater. Her hair was pulled back. She looked, for the first time in my life, tired. She did not apologize for the plan. She apologized for the motive. "I became," she said, stirring a coffee she never touched, "addicted to the image, to the idea of the Woods family. I thought it was a fortress. I didn't realize it was a cage. I don't know how to fix what I broke, Jasmine, but I am asking for a chance to try." Sloane was just quiet. The brittle, performative lawyer was gone. She looked like a student who had just failed the bar. She had the documents from Mara in her purse, the buyout agreement, the non-disclosure agreements. "I'll sign," Sloane said, her voice flat. "The buyout, I'll sign it." She looked at Mara, then at me. "The conditions? They're acceptable." The conditions had been Mara's idea. The buyout was contingent on two things. Sloane had to enter mandatory financial counseling for her debt, and she had to attend therapy for a minimum of 1 year. It was not a punishment. It was a lifeline. The next day, in Mara's office, I signed the final papers, the 5-year payout schedule. It was an enormous sum of money, but with the new advance from Halcyon and the sales rolling in, it was manageable. The brownstone, my grandmother's house, was now fully, legally, and spiritually mine. It was not a trophy I had won. It was not a spoil of war. It was just my desk, my place to work, the right to tell my own story, secured in brick and mortar. Gideon had been ecstatic about the press, but he gave me one last piece of advice, the best I had ever received. We were having celebratory drinks at the Newberry. "The press is going to want the revenge story," he said, swirling his whiskey. "They want the blood. Don't give it to them. Your next book, your next interview, you write this for the next rookie. You give them a message. Don't write to get revenge. Write to get free. It's a much bigger market." The world settled. The aftershocks faded. Veronica, in a move that shocked everyone, quietly resigned from every board. She sold the massive Back Bay condo, the one I had never felt comfortable in. She took a small, quiet job at a community arts fund, reading grant applications from local artists. She was, in her own way, finally doing what she had always pretended to, supporting the arts. Sloane's path was harder. The invitation from the ethics committee, combined with the quiet implosion of Wood's development, made her toxic. She was asked to resign from her firm. The luxury car was repossessed, but she did not collapse. She took the buyout money from me and, instead of spending it, she used it to pay down her debts. She started therapy. 6 months later, she took a job at a small, humble firm, doing estate planning, no million-dollar cases, no celebrity clients. She told my father, in one of their rare conversations, that for the first time in her adult life, she was sleeping through the night. And Robert, my father, he took the job. He was there at the brownstone every day, cataloging my grandmother's books, overseeing the painters, commissioning local art. The house came alive, not with the ghosts of the past, but with the promise of the future. The day I moved my desk into the main library, my new office, he was waiting for me. He had hung a single, simple frame over the fireplace. It was a charcoal sketch he had done in college, one I had always loved, a small, simple sketch of the Boston Harbor at dawn. In the bottom left corner, in his familiar, architectural script, he had written 2 words: freedom, for you. That night, for the first time, I sat at my own desk, in my own house, the city of Boston, my city. Hummed outside the tall windows, the sounds of traffic, of life, of a world moving forward, felt less like an intrusion and more like a new, steady breath. I turned on the desk lamp. The warm, yellow light pooled on the desk. I opened my laptop. A blank page. A white, infinite, beautiful blank page. I put my fingers on the keys. The old whispers were still there. The voice that said, hobby. The voice that said, unstable. The voice that said, anchor. They were all there, but they were very, very quiet now. I write, I realized, not to silence anyone else. I write to finally quiet the whispers in myself. I began to type. The only sound in the room was the click of the keys. It was the only applause I had ever really needed. It was loud, it was clear, and it was, finally, enough. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you want to see more stories like this one, show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.